The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Jason Bryan from the Short-Time Wrestling Podcast and founder of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and operated, and those opinions presented and expressed may not reflect others, the sponsors, patrons, or the parent network. Find more shows about the greatest sport in the world at the Matt Talk Podcast Network at matttalkonline.com.
The mind of Pat Popolizio is a wondrous thing. And for you Pack wrestling fans, you'll get to go inside the mind of the Skip each and every episode here on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast. Now, here's your host, NC State Director of Athletics Digital Communications, Brian Reinhardt.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, episode number 71. And if we had any money, we could do some music right now, but we are back in the saddle again, live from the studio. We're joined by the one and only head coach, Pat Popolizio.
It's great to hear the voice again of the host, Brian. Nice to have you.
Pat, it's even better to be in person.
Yeah,
it's
been a while.
Now, I know you haven't been on your podcast too much this summer, but it has been a while since we've been in person. So it's great to do this podcast. I feel like there is so much wrestling news right now, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's great to be back in the swing of some sort of competition, a little different, but it was good. We got a good boys trip in this past week. It's nice to be on the bus for about 9 hours together.
You didn't go up on the bus, though.
I did not.
Okay,
that is true. But I actually prefer the bus over traveling in the air. So I'll take a bus trip any day over flying.
A lot of freestyle action. We'll catch up. Folk style. Our schedule came out. We're going to dive into that, too. We're after classes are done here, before Christmas break. What is practice going on, or what's going on with the current guys?
Yeah, we've been back for a little over a week now. And we've amped up our workouts pretty good. I think the guys have responded extremely well to it, but we've put in a lot more mat time in. Practices is shift to morning workouts. Not having classes right now really gives the guys a chance to focus in on their training and recovery as well. And we're on a good schedule right now, but there's a lot of consistency. It's nice to have everyone in there together. But yeah, we've amped up our workouts quite a bit in the time that we've been spending on the mat. So I'm liking the response I got from the guys, because at first it was tough on them, going from whatever we were doing time wise on the mat to basically doubling the amount of work that we were doing. And you can see it on the guys' faces. I'll tell you that.
I was going to say, I guess that means they lost the baby fat.
Baby fat, but there's a lot of. You can see some good black eyes and some guys that got a little banged up from some of the intensity that was going on.
Now, you kind of knew that the season was going to be pushed back to January 1st anyway, but you are the type of head coach. You like to plan out and have specific days to do specific stuff. How hard was it to try to get ready for the cycle of the season this off season?
It's been very challenging. I think our program runs really well on structure, and that includes from the guys the way that they go day to day, and then you're as a sport, you're used to a certain schedule, a start time, your preseason, your off season, and all that got thrown out the window. So I think no one has an advantage over anyone. It comes down to who's going to be ready to compete, who wants to win when we kick off, and we want to make sure that we were able to throw in our 10 best guys per dual meet. And, with the COVID and the situations that we're in, I think you're going to see week to week, certain guys are going to be in and out of the lineup due to, depending their situation or contact tracing and how things work. But we got to be ready to go. We've had that talk. All 35 guys on our roster need to be ready to go. And someone's going to get called up last minute, and they need to be ready to compete for us. So we got to do a good job this year as a coaching staff to prepare all 35 guys for that.
I'm going to skip all around here. I didn't do any notes, so this is all
Yeah,
off
I
the
can
cuff.
see.
This is
Very
kind of
unprepared
exciting.
today.
I don't know what we're going to talk about next. But something that came up made me think. This year for the winter sports, it's kind of a freebie year. It's not going to count towards eligibility. Does that mean, like you just said, all 35 guys have to be ready? Are you willing to throw out a freshman if the opportunity presents itself?
Absolutely. We've talked about it. We're going to put the 10 best guys we can in the lineup. And I think you'll see some new faces for sure wrestling this year for NC State. And I know we return all 10 guys from last year. And that's good. I think that means we're gonna see guys being pushed across the board, and it's going to keep guys motivated. But yeah, that's definitely something you're going to see, some new faces in our lineup.
It was announced ACC championships are now going to be in Reynolds Coliseum February 28th. It wasn't our turn in the cycle. NC State stepping up, going to host the ACC championship.
I'll get you a ticket. Don't worry. We'll get you in there.
I hope so. I need to get in that door. That's a good event. Any change to that event? I'm pretty sure that structure is going to be the same this year, isn't it?
Yeah. The way the tournaments ran, everything will be good. 2 mats makes it easy. The biggest thing is probably the no fans. I would imagine that's going to stay in place. So, Reynolds is rocking when you get a good crowd in there. So that's going to obviously change some things. But I'll tell you this, we went this past weekend and we were wrestling in a small venue, no fans at all. And it felt like there was 20,000 people and there were just 2 teams. When you get 2 intense teams battling it out, it sounds like there's a lot more people in there than there really is. So either way, there's going to be some good, exciting action.
Shortened schedule this year. 3 home duels scheduled for Reynolds Coliseum. Appalachian State, Pitt, and Duke are all be coming to Raleigh. And you kind of answered the question. Expectations right now, probably not letting fans in except for student athlete guest and your guest, but they will all be streamed. They'll be on TV. Coming off last year, those crowds against Carolina, Virginia Tech, how different is it going to be with really not a lot of fans or even noise except for what your team's going to be making?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot different. And we've worked really hard as a program and a department to build up our fan base here. So you always want to reward that with a good showing and a good environment, and not being able to do that this year is disappointing. Hopefully something does change in the near future, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Good news is technology's caught up, and we're able to stream these matches online, so no one will miss the action regardless. It's just where will you be, and definitely we're going to have to do something to make it sound loud in there, because it's an awesome environment when that is packed. But yeah, those 2 matches obviously will be on the road this year, so we'll flip flop having, I think it's Duke and Pitt at home.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks for paying attention.
I did.
But you'll really be able to hear your clap when you're mad at the official this year, I believe.
No, never.
They'll
get muted out. We're gonna have to get a waiver to get some music playing in there.
Now, you might not even know the answer to this. You said it's a confusing process. NCAA championships, St. Louis, Missouri. Every team's going to have a shortened schedule. How the heck are they going to do seedings and just allocations for the NCAAs this year?
Yeah, I think that's still up in the air a little bit. There's talk, depending on how many teams are wrestling this year. I think everybody saw that the Ivies are out. So the field is already shortened when it comes to the teams competing on the season. So I don't know what the bracket's going to look like. I don't know how many they're going to allow. I do know that the best guys are going to show up, compete, and be ready to go. And ultimately, I think that's what got taken away last year, is these guys to get their individual titles and the teams to go out there and compete. So we just need to get there. We need to compete and get these guys in that tournament so they can leave it on the line and finish out their careers competing for a national title, whether it's a team or an individual.
Now, I mentioned the ACC championship, the NCAA championship. The rest of the schedule is all duels. So obviously there's no Southern Scuffle, no Las Vegas, no Reno. How's the process of no open tournaments? Does that hinder your progress of your guys that might not be in the starting 10? Or how do you see no open tournaments, no red shirts doing anything this year in those type of tournaments?
It's definitely going to be different. I like the fact that we're fortunate enough to have guys who've, we return all 10 guys, so our guys know what they need to do as far as being ready. It does probably put a little different look for the young guys. So we're trying to get creative on how we compete in the room. We're also trying to get creative on how we compete in conference and these different events. I think you're going to see a lot of extra matches being wrestled, whether it's the same day as a duel or the next day getting up and picking both rosters and just matching guys up with a ref in there and getting matches, because that's a huge part of the future, is the development of those young guys and having them being able to compete week to week in those open tournaments. Sometimes it's a little challenging on the guys to go and drive. So I like the fact that this year, when we do these events, these guys can travel with us and get those extra matches in as well. And hopefully that's something that changes the future of our red shirts, being able to do something together and not so much on their own.
Sounds like a team bonding, a lot of bus trips this year.
That is true. We're going to be doing a lot of that, and I think that's when you really get to know guys, who they are, and you get to know who likes what movies on the bus. So don't be bringing any of those bad movies on the bus.
Donnie,
please.
Yeah, I don't know if Donnie's going to be invited. His movie selection. All right, so you haven't been on your own podcast for a while, so we're going to go back to November. You guys signed 6 of your new signees. They'll be here next year. I know it's hard to think about this coming season, but already spinning ahead to next year. Maybe not talking about individuals yet, but quite a class that you came in with, a lot of high accolades. Just can you talk about the 6 new guys that will be coming here next year and just kind of how they will mold into the NC State wrestling program?
Yeah, and they're guys that are pretty familiar with our program. I think over the years, a lot of them actually been coming out to our camps or have ties to our program through either current roster guys or family members that are on our team. So I like where we stand with that. I know our coaching staff did a phenomenal job going out and continuing to recruit the like-minded mentality wrestlers that we're looking for, student athletes overall. We've got a lot of depth in the mix now. As you fast forward to next year, I think you're going to see we're going to be in a good spot when it comes to depth and guys that we're going to be able to rely on to go out and win, whether that's a new guy coming in or a guy that's here that's developing. And it's the same talk we have every week with the guys that are here is, someone is going to come in behind you that's just as talented. And if you have the years in front of them, you just got to keep working hard to make sure the competition brings out the best in all of us, and we're going to make sure we have a competitive roster that's pushing the starters to keep elevating their game. And that's what we want here at NC State. We want to be able to have the depth and also the guys to push each other to make sure that they're ready to go out and win a national title.
We can't mention anybody by name because they're only commits. They haven't signed yet, but your junior class of recruits, you're already off to a really great start. Obviously, you've been dealing with COVID. No one's allowed on campus. You guys aren't allowed to go recruit. So You're kind of used to it now, but a great start to that junior class already, and you're still looking for some more out there. So just how's recruiting going during this unique time?
Yeah, it's different for sure. It's got to get creative. I think looking back at it, everybody wanted a little bit of a dead period for after season.
They're getting that dead period.
We got a long dead period. I was thinking maybe just 2 or 3 weeks of a dead period, not 8 months or 9 months, whatever, over a year. But no, we've had to get creative with the way you communicate with kids, being able to see things and talk. And luckily, we're in a hot spot, one of the best places in the country, for, in my eyes, when it comes to college athletics, where kids will be willing to show up on their own and check things out. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is these kids got to take things in their own hands and get on campus and look at it. And all we can do is, talk to them before and talk to them after. And hopefully once this dead period gets lifted, we're able to get aggressive again and get these guys in person, show them around. But yeah, I like where we're at. There's a lot of talent out there, and we just got to keep finding the guys that fit our mentality. What we do here is a little different. We challenge our guys pretty good on and off the mat, and we want to continue to find these guys that fit that mold and that mentality. And I think our guys have current roster guys are doing a great job. winning sells your program more than anything. And that's what these guys have been able to do. They've won on and off the mat academically and graduating early and getting their master's degree. And then, I think this weekend showed a lot where we're at, even though team-wise maybe didn't fall into the right place where we want to be, but a lot of individuals know that they can come to NC State and compete with the best guys in the world, and young guys. I think Trent showed that where he was at this weekend. I know in your notes you got written down.
Well, you're really jumping ahead here. Good Lord.
You got me on a good question, so I figured I'd run with it.
These are great questions. That would have been a great segue to the RTC Cup, but I had one more question.
Yeah, throw it at me.
Academics. Everything was virtual this year.
Yeah.
How did you guys do? How different was it? Just how did everybody adapt?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and I am just really happy with the way that our guys stepped up this semester. I want to say we finished with a 3.2 overall GPA, but I'm going to have to go and make sure that I look that up.
We'll get the facts.
We got to get the facts, okay. But I want to say 20-something plus made the dean's list, and overall, guys crushed it academically, and that's not easy to do back-to-back, going from last year and then falling into this year. The freshman is the one. A lot of times it's a transition for them. So we didn't have summer school this year to really get those guys acclimated. So we had to do what we could, and our academic advisors have done a phenomenal job. Aaron stays on top of these guys, has a great relationship with all of them, and make sure that they're getting their stuff done. Timmy's been our liaison with academics, and setting that bar really high and making sure following through week to week when we do our updates on where we're at academically. It's a lot. We're managing 35 guys, and sometimes it becomes a lot of work. And I can tell you this: we hold our guys accountable, and they know it. And I think once you set that standard, it's hard to fall behind it, and especially when you got guys. We've had multiple guys now get a 4.0. So if someone's not carrying their weight on this team, it shows, and guys obviously will let you know that. And our leaders are some of the best guys we have, crushing it academically. So it's been a good thing. We got to make sure we maintain where we're at and have everybody on the same page, which we're doing right now.
RTC Cup, everybody's been waiting to talk about this. Great event. You guys went up to Cincinnati, most by bus. I heard one guy by car, a couple coaches by plane. Everybody got up there. Very unique. You had former guys and current guys all competing. So, okay. So it's in the text.
Yeah.
The team term GPA, 3.265.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Now you lost my train of thought.
We had 30 earning a 3.0 or higher out of 35 guys.
I don't know if I like you with all this technology now. It's like you're getting answers here.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way,
I'll say that again. 30 guys got above a 3.0.
30 guys above a 3.0 out of 35.
Yeah.
Hate to be those 5 guys. But, speaking of technology, podcast might be changing up a little bit here. We're going to be innovative. We could have a new feature. Could be seeing Pat's mug a little bit more, just as a little tease. So we're pumping some money into this thing. So get ready. RTC Cup helping us. They got us some money.
Yeah.
You guys came back with a little bit of cash.
We came back a little bit. It was, I guess, a success overall as far as being able to go compete, getting what we needed out of it. Want to win every time we step on the mat. We know that as individuals and as a team. The guys we brought are some of the more established competitors that have been through NC State and that are currently on our roster. And that's why those guys came here, is because they wanted to be around some of the best freestylers in the country / world. We're making gains. We're making progress. And resources go a long way. When you're looking at our club right now, being able to keep these guys here in the training and then adding Ed Ruth to the mix of things. We want to be one of the elite programs in the country, and we have to have this. It was prize money was on the line. I think anybody that watched that duel knows, there was shoulda, coulda, woulda with a lot of different opportunities with different guys. And I like the fact that we went out there and competed with mainly all NC State guys. That last duel with Michigan was a full lineup of guys who wrestled here in our team. And, I think there were some breakthrough performances with Trent going out there and getting that win, Tommy reversing a loss that he had here in Raleigh a year ago. And, again, it comes down to why did we go there? And it was to get everybody competition, and we needed to be tested. And I think every guy left there being tested, knowing that, hey, we still got work to do and we got to make our adjustments. And at the end of the day, April is when it's going to matter most for these individuals. And we got a lot of time to correct some things. And it's not going to stop anybody from accomplishing their goals. But ultimately, I love the fact that we were able to go there as a team with guys who wrestled for us at NC State, are still here training, and then they're new guys, because I know it changed the attitude of a lot of guys who just traveled with us. Even though they didn't get to compete, they saw what it takes to be in an elite level and how competitive it is at this next level of competition.
You said no fans, but even watching on the media company that put this thing on, I'm not going to say their name, but the excitement level, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, the team benches everybody was getting into it. And these RTC guys, they really don't have that team environment anymore. It really is an individual. So Gwiz, Mock, Tommy, how much did they enjoy just being part of a team again and going through a duel? Yeah,
I was talking to those guys about it, and they missed. I think that's the one thing those guys miss. They travel on their own a lot together, but it's tournaments for themselves. And this one, there was team pride on the line there. Obviously for individuals, yes, but there's that team pride that you don't get to be in those intense battles where every point, every situation mattered. And that's what we felt and saw. And, for the most part, we split 3-3 with a lot of these matches we were in, only having 6 bouts. Every point did matter. And, we had a couple weights where there were some inexperienced freestyle guys. Can't really hide some of that.
I think you retired one guy.
Yeah, we had to retire him there that weekend. It was time. But we got to give him credit for making the weight and going out there and competing, because he did that for the team. That's Kevin. Obviously, we know he wasn't big in the freestyle, but looking back at it, I originally thought we signed up for a true RTC, and then last minute, as I saw what was happening, we could have went out and shopped around a little bit to get a little more depth. But it's all good. We learned, we got better. And more importantly, I wanted to reward our guys here that trained at NC State to go on the mat and compete. And that's what we got out of it.
How's it been coaching with the face mask recently?
I think it's good, because then this way no one can read your lips if you mumble something at the ref, right? Might have to get those on all the time now. No, it's different, getting used to it. But then every now and then you try yelling something, and you're like, can they hear me? Hey, can you hear me?
Like he said, some great performances. Trent was actually named the USA Wrestling Athlete of the Week for going 5-0. And you mentioned he had that great win. One of many great wins over Amin. Camacho, I thought he really, you said he's a guy who hasn't done a lot of freestyle recently, but between senior nationals and this event, Camacho's really starting to get the groove here for some freestyle, and that's got to help him going forward to the college season. Yeah,
coming into NC State prior in high school, I don't think he wrestled much freestyle, and he realized that if you want to be at an elite level, that's probably something he's going to have to get his feet wet into, and he's done that. And he's really studied it. He's made some really big gains in a short period of time doing so. So I think the sky's the limit for him when it comes to whatever he wants to accomplish, both, at the NCAA level and then freestyle down the road. But yeah, our younger guys came to compete. Obviously they all did, but I don't think, when you get to that level, when you're still in college, sometimes you get overlooked. And I liked where we were at with all those guys. Trent, I think his story was probably one of the more unique ones of where he was at.
Did you see this?
That was an awesome graphic. That was
we sent out a graphic afterward.
a lot of comments on that.
We did Raise the Roof. I won't. Well, no, I'll take,
you got to take credit for that.
I will take. It was my idea.
I know you can't do the artwork to that, but you can come up with them.
I have no skills whatsoever at the artwork, but Trent
you're
Hiley,
the voice
Raise the Roof.
You're a voice guy.
Little comic. But I mean, a graphic like this that just tells you that you have some resources behind the scenes that are just instrumental in helping pub up the program, and this kind of stuff helps and just getting the word out there about NC State. One guy I did want to ask you about, and it was funny, I actually talked to him on Monday about something else, but I said, Nick Wisdowski, I was like, Nick, I don't think I've ever talked to you after a loss before. It's been so rare since he's taken a loss, but he did fall and he went 2-2. Do you have to say anything to Nick after those situations? What do you think going forward? He laid it all on the line. He came out, he wrestled. What do you kind of talk to about Nick? He's such a veteran guy who's been through so many situations.
It's wants to win. You know, that's what makes Nick's great is he wants to win. And you got to respect the guy for going out there and competing and putting it on the line. Because yes, it could have easily been. There's no point. There's no need right now to do that. And I think that's going to make him better when it matters. He'll still go into the trials as the number 1 seed. But I think it's a good to go through that process right now and know that, hey, you still gotta work on a few things. And I think more than anything, you know that there's guys out there that are training to beat you. We all know that, but sometimes you need a fresh reminder that if there's a day that maybe you don't feel like doing A, B, or C, that now we can just say, hey, just remember that there's a couple guys that are really focused in on you. And it's been, those guys probably set that on the calendar and knew that, hey, I'm going to get a chance at this guy, where I think Nick was just training to be Nick. And when I'm ready to wrestle, I'm going to do what I do. And now, he knows he's got to zone in a little bit on certain things, and it won't change. I still have all the confidence in the world in Nick making that Olympic team and accomplishing his goal as an Olympic champ, because he's a pro and he'll make his adjustments. And we were training just to keep training. There wasn't a set date on the calendar that I'm going to run into this competition, where I think those guys had that advantage. But at the end of the day, you still got to show up. You still got to compete, and you still got to win. And he did. He beat one of them, wrestling that many high-level guys in a short period of time. I don't think that's something we're all used to doing. So it's a little bit of what the trial is going to be, a little more spread out and a little more recovery. So, yeah, I think sometimes you need a wake-up call. We got it, and we'll adapt and adjust. And if anything, it's going to spark fire that's much needed sometimes in people's training and their career. I've watched plenty of guys take losses and still win the Olympics or national titles, depending on what level we're competing at. So we'll be ready.
Last one, getting you out of here on this. Special guest today on this podcast, I had former NC State wrestler Dustin Kawa.
You say Justin or Dustin?
Dustin, man. I was so worried about the last name because he told me how to pronounce it like 5 times and I kept messing it up.
That's good.
Dustin, I apologize, but I did get your last name right on that one. But he owns Takedown Sports. Big talk. Wrestling media, fans all love the Wolfpack Wrestling Club singlets. Takedown works a lot with Mock, works with Tommy, works with Nick, helping these guys advance. But the singlets, everybody's talking about them. Love the retro look. What do you think?
I love the singlets. I think we got a lot of good compliments from it, and that goes back to Dustin. Conversation I had with him. I said, hey, this is going to be a great chance to platform singlets, uniforms, and apparel. And, being an alumni here at NC State, I know he wants to back our program and getting involved. That's been a huge help in branding. We want to make sure we have sharp looking singlets. It's one we haven't had, and I was thankful that his artist sat down and put a really nice design together for us. But yeah, that's something we've been working on for a while, and they came out really good.
Turned out great. Everybody loved them. Pat, Great to catch up with you. I haven't done it for a while, so it's good to hear your voice.
Same, as always, Brian.
I listen to those voicemails that you leave me when I don't answer the call.
I guess you can't call you after 5:01, and it's you're off the clock. So.
Actually, it's more like 2:00, but let's not tell anybody that. I'm a morning guy.
I guess so.
Pat, exciting. Going to be catching up a lot more. NC State wrestling season right around the corner. Fans, keep up with us on social media, on Twitter at Pack Wrestle, on Instagram at Wolfpack Wrestling. And we look forward to having some bouts. So stay tuned for our featured interview. Let me interrupt this episode and take a few seconds to thank our great fan base that continues to support NC State Wolfpack Wrestling and especially support and listen to this podcast. The Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast is now in its 4th season covering the Wolfpack Wrestling program. During our first 3 years, the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast has had featured guests such as a pair of WWE Hall of Famers, an MMA World Champion, multiple former NCAA champions and All-Americans, and of course, the current coaches and student athletes of the NC State wrestling team. To continue to support this podcast, please go in and subscribe to the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Just search hashtag Pack Mentality. And also please follow the NC State wrestling team on social media. On Twitter, we're at Pack Wrestle. And on Instagram, we are Wolfpack Wrestling. Now joining us on the Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast, a former NC State wrestler himself and owner of Takedown Sportswear, who came up with the much talked about Wolfpack Wrestling Club singlets from the very recent RTC Cup. Welcome in our guest, Dustin Kawa. Dustin, thanks for joining the podcast today.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning.
Now, we're going to dive into that fashion statement that the Wolfpack Wrestling Club made with those singlets and even the warm-ups that everybody loved. But I think it would only be proper to talk some wrestling first with you, as you had quite the successful career in a red and white NC State singlet yourself back under Coach Guzzo. You were a 2-time ACC champion, part of 3 ACC championship Wolfpack teams in the early 2000s. How would you sum up your Wolfpack wrestling career?
My personal career, I think as an athlete and then later on as a coach, you always look back and look and see what you could have done better. I think I was one that was focused, not as maturely focused as some of the athletes heading into college these days with digital, social, internet, and whatnot, and really seeing the exposure. I was a Georgia boy who was in a much smaller wrestling state. And so to kind of come into college and especially at Division I level, it was a completely different transition where the Wolfpack wrestlers today, start seeing, wrestling on the internet as early as, a child. So, for me, it was just a completely different era than what I see in the guys today.
Can you imagine if when your wrestling days, if you had Flow and all these other websites and videos and social media, how much different would have your career probably been?
Drastically. I was a big film guy. And so the only film I had back then, and I hate even saying out loud, but was the VHS and whatnot. I mean, in all seriousness, Georgia wrestling was so removed from the big boys that when we did finally get into the action, it was like, whoa, what is this world? And now I look at what wrestling is today in comparison, especially with what Pat's been able to do with the program. It's just completely different eras.
Like I said, you were wrestling here at NC State in the early 2000s. So high school puts you, I don't want to date you, but I'm as old as you are, puts you in the late 90s. Was there, you're Georgia, so obviously maybe not a hotbed. Were you guys going to national tournaments and all this like kids are traveling around the country now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's really what defined my high school career. I'd been traveling since I was 7 years old around the country to kind of seek out the top competition. But really what separated me at the time was senior nationals. It was every high school state champion in the country was thrown in one bracket. And they said, look, let's just see who the best of the best is. And fortunately, in 1999, I won that tournament and pinned my kid in the finals. And that's what opened up the floodgates to the college opportunities. Had a few opportunities prior to that, but really at that once I won that tournament, everybody kind of knew I was the real deal. So they gave me a full scholarship to North Carolina State and was on from there.
Do you ever get to come up here and go to a duel with Pat's teams or anything? Or how much of the current product do you keep up with?
Yeah, I keep up with it heavily. To be honest with you, I took about probably 7 years off, pretty heavily removed from college wrestling until Pat took over the program and just saw what he was able to do with mentoring kids and really putting, full effort into it, from recruiting to apparel to, lifestyle to education to, literally he does A to Z. He really defines the process before the kids even get there and saying, hey, we're a school looking to win a national championship. If you come here, this is what's expected of you. And just that whole mindset, man, I just fell back in love with NC State wrestling again. And he said at one time, he said, we're building something to make all you guys be proud of something. And I feel proud to be a pack of Wolfpack wrestling community again, where I think there are years where we weren't. So, everything he stands for, everything the program stands for, I'm fully behind it. We help sponsor some of the RTC guys. I have two of my first students from 17 years ago are starters on the program, or fifth year seniors this year, the Bullard twins. Those kids are, they're like second and third children. They're actually, at one point, there were 6 Bullards that used to train with me. So the Bullard family is an extended family of mine. Just everything about the program I'm attracted to and excited about what Pat's been able to bring.
Now, when you wrestled here in those years, were the duels the same environment like they are now? I mean, we kind of get some fans in here now. How was it back in your day?
Oh man, only thing I could say is there's a reason why Pat's teams are where they're at today. Everything's different. The team camaraderie, just the team itself, the efforts behind it, the thought process behind it. There's just so much different today than what we had. And again, I don't want to kind of go back on the past, but fast forward of what he's been able to accomplish in these last, I guess he's been there about 7 years now. It's really been outstanding. And again, I'll say it again, it makes us proud to be a Wolfpack wrestler again.
Now, turning to life outside of wrestling and dating us right after your college days were over here at NC State, back in 2006, Takedown Sportswear really took shape as you got to work alongside with your dad, starting that company. Not only was it a sporting goods store, but you got into the design aspect of uniforms, training gear, even a clothing line. Takedown was one of the very first companies in the country that sold brands for wrestlers designed by wrestlers. So take us back to those early days. How did Takedown come about, and why did you think it was a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, when I first graduated college, I actually opened up a wrestling training facility. My passion was initially into helping young wrestlers follow that same journey that I did. Being able to be a college athlete is just special in itself, no matter what sport it is. And then also just being a Division I wrestler for me and just seeing the difference of competition and training and what it did for me. It allowed me, honestly, to graduate college by having that focus of wrestling coupled with it. So I wanted to help other wrestlers from Georgia have that pathway to college. I spent 15 years in the training facility space. I think at the time when I opened, there were about 2 college wrestlers a year heading out of Georgia. Over the last 15 years, we placed, I think, 150 to 200 kids successfully. It actually took me about 5 years to get the guys acclimated to that shift to head into college. And then my second year in business with the coaching side, I saw the demand to make wrestlers fashionable. To be honest with you, it was like, man, how do wrestlers still look like this with, crappy uniforms, crappy T-shirts, the design? And then that's when Takedown Sportswear was formed. And initially we started as a wrestling retail shop that resold uniforms for players like Brute and other companies. And then we decided to become our own manufacturer. So today, Takedown houses, over 100 employees, and we have a full cut and sew operation now and design uniforms for all sports, all corporations, and even for like the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA.
You kind of touched this on a little bit, but obviously you have a great working relationship with many teams and clubs, including obviously the Wolfpack Wrestling Club here at NC State. Tell us how Takedown Sportswear works with an organization like the Wolfpack Wrestling Club.
Yeah, so specifically with NC State, I always go to Pat and leadership and say, how can I help first, right? Without just throwing a check out to them, which that's always nice to support. It's like, how can we make those guys look good? How can we promote the program? How can we help with camps? How can we help with, fundraiser opportunities? And it goes back to really how and why we first started. And it was ultimately just to make wrestlers fashionable. So when I think about NC State wrestling specifically, it's really just how do we make everyone fashionable? How do we make everybody feel good about what they're wearing? And that's either fan wear or that's either competition wear.
I think I should note that fans listening, Pat will gladly accept a check if that's all you want to do. So, now your singlets were very much on display at the RTC Cup that just took place. Of course, the Wolfpack Wrestling Club sported them. And among many national media that covered the event, the singlets and warm-ups really stood out. Everybody loved them. Maybe take us through the design process. How did they come about?
Sure. We've been, working with the RTC since I guess it developed a few years ago. We took on Gwiazdowski as a sponsored athlete. So we've really been on the, I guess not even the sidelines, but really been participating in this involvement over the last few years. And, Pat and I have been talking about kind of rebranding the look of the RTC and from logos to, colors to, mascots to like, what does it need to represent? And so we did our first design, I guess, a few weeks ago, and he wasn't happy with it. I wasn't happy with it. And we kind of just went back to the drawing board with my senior designer and came up with this kind of retro look and feel. And it just felt right. And the second we put it on the monitor, it was like, yep, that's it. So we're going to do a rebranding of the RTC for Wolfpack and kind of seeing what that looks like, and then having some, guidance moving forward instead of just having a signature logo and building everything else around it. So we'll have a true brand guideline book with it.
And obviously you saw the singlets throughout the process, but how did you feel seeing them during the matches, either in videos or pictures? How do you think they turned out?
Well, I always say when you're winning, you always look better than if you're losing. So, considering some of the guys had some rock star weekends, I thought they looked good and they represented the program well. I think they look first class in comparison to some of the other ones.
Now, I might have to tease you a little bit here, but a couple people on message boards, they wanted me to ask this question. Wolfpack Wrestling Club comes out, wrestles in those 2 duels, stunning red lettering, cursive, old school, like you said. Next day, you get some blue. Now, it wasn't a certain shade of blue, but how did the blue become the day 2 choice?
Red and blue. It's just the signature of international wrestling. Okay. You get, red and blue is your red and blue, your colors. Obviously, if I did that in a lighter shade of blue, they might have throw some stones at me, but the red and blue is common. I didn't know exactly what all the regulations were. Oftentimes you can see a different color, but I'll blame Pat for that one. He told me red and blue.
Pat likes to push the envelope, so I'm glad you put the blame on him. But this is something he also mentioned. Now, outside of those singlets, Takedown has a very good working relationship with some of our current guys that train full-time here at the RTC. How do you guys work with guys like Gwiz, Tommy Gant, and Mock now? What's the working relationship, and how do you guys help out these guys?
Sure. It goes back to my initial thing. It's how can we help them, right? I mean, not every time and not all resources are available just to write a check. So it's like, how do we help these guys represent themselves the right way? My company's in a huge transition mode and has been for about 3 years now. Again, we started in wrestling, but we saw that we could be something bigger and still be a part of wrestling. And that's been this next generation manufacturing. A lot of this is an on-demand printing service, all based around digital experiences and very high-end equipment that allows consumers to either customize their own product, but really it's just on demand. So until it's sold, the gear is not made. And so what we've been in transition of the last 3 years is bringing on a Gwizdowski, bringing on a Mock, bringing on a Gant, and allowing these guys to really promote themselves. And whatever they sell, we make on demand. This process is really going to roll out heavily in 2021 more than it has in the previous years. So these guys are guys that I care about and I've spent a lot of time with over the years and followed their careers. Now I want to primarily help them, but then also use them as some of our first guys to this new next generation manufacturing and helping their own brand. We're calling it a business in a box. So you think about myself 17 years ago, I'm trying to sell t-shirts. I'm trying to run around and, sell lessons and whatnot. And, a lot of times you don't have the right resources in place. So we are a resource and an advisor of sorts to these guys and hope to be for years to come.
I was going to say, how much fun is it for you as a former state guy yourself? These guys, a lot of accolades, national champions, All-Americans, but Gwiz is involved into the process, designing his stuff. We know TG has stuff out there. Mock has now started. How fun is it to you work with these guys? They have a heck of a lot of input in what you're designing down there.
Yeah, again, it goes back to just helping them, right? I mean, the best thing you can ever do is follow people that have done things successfully in the past. Obviously, you don't have to follow their exact pathway, but man, there are a lot of people that have been successful in a lot of different areas. You don't always have to reinvent the process, right? And so from the apparel wrestling side, what I'm doing is putting in a formula to allowing these guys to, hey, step in this direction. This is the direction we can head. And then let's see how successful we can do to get there. Obviously, if you go and win an Olympic title, things change, right? Those conversations change. But based on where we're at today, a few years out of college and building their professional career, this is a nice position to be in, working with a company like ours.
I'll get you out here on this. Takedown Sportswear is located Lawrenceville, Georgia, very famously the hometown of Daniel and Thomas Bullard. You mentioned you've probably been working with them since they were 6 years old. Then now they're up here at state, fifth-year seniors, once again in the starting lineup. Can you speak on the progress that you've seen from the Bullards and how far do you think they can go this upcoming season?
Well, my expectation is, first off, take a step back. These kids are just amazing individuals. They have been since they were kids. They were kids that came in the room and weren't always the most athletic, weren't always the strongest. But my goodness, if you got in a scrap with the Bullards from 6 years old till 18 in our room, you're in a dogfight. Those kids have earned every bit of their accomplishments. Both Bullards combined won 6 national titles. Thomas won 4, Daniel won 2, probably could have won more with minus some injuries, some other, weight class things. The boys were always identical in weight and look, so that one was always wrestling up a weight class to kind of sacrifice for the other. And now in college, you got the Hidleys around them, you got all this other talent. So the boys, have, had to juggle that. I have full expectations of those boys since day one of being national champions. Last year got cut out, regardless of what rankings are, but I have a strong belief that the boys are going to be competing for a national title this year. And also they have an opportunity for a 6-year, which is an odd thing to even say, but COVID's allowed that as well. The boys actually have 2 years left if they choose it, and I hope they do. But I really believe it in my heart that those kids can win national titles.
You personally, when was the last time you chose down against one of them?
Oh, let me tell you right now. They so the first high school kid to ever beat me, it took about 10 to 12 years into my coaching. That was Chip Ness. He was a 2-time All-American out of UNC. Hate to drop his name. But their teammate was Chip, and then the next 2 were the Bullard twins. you abuse kids physically and mentally for 10 plus years as a coach. And the second they get the opportunity to beat you, it's it's not a fun day for the coach. And heck no, man, I wouldn't go on bottom of Daniel or Thomas right now. I don't even know what amount of money it'd be worth doing it, especially Thomas.
Dustin, thanks for letting us catch up with you today. I have no fashion sense whatsoever, but even I know the Wolfpack Wrestling Club singlets, very well done. Congrats on coming up with such a great product and walking us through the concept. And just thank you for supporting NC State wrestling as much as you do.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thanks for doing great things, and congratulations to Wolfpack Wrestling and Pat and his success.
I want to thank everybody for listening today. This is your Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast covering all things NC State wrestling. Until next time, Wolfpack Wrestling fans, go Pack.
Go Pack.
Pack Mentality Pop-Ins podcast is produced by the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, go to MatTalkOnline.com.